long before the days of the Galactic Empire, even the days preceding founding the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Order, there was the Jedi. They were composed of philosophers, warriors, seers, healers, scholars, shamans, and scientists that dedicated themselves to the study of the Force, as well as becoming the Tython system's first peacekeeping force. They never restricted themselves to the light or dark, rather preferring to serve Ashla and Bogan simultaneously. This would soon lead to conflicting ideologies between the members of the Jedi, which would lead to future Force wars within the Order. The result would be the founding of the Jedi Order, this time solely dedicated to the tenets of the light side. Eventually, with the founding of the Galactic Republic, the Jedi would become known to the galaxy at large and would maintain the justice of the entire Republic. For centuries, the Republic would enjoy a long era of peace, up until a group of dissident Jedi began to delve into the practices of the dark side, and so ensued the first great Jedi schism that would eventually become the 100-Year Darkness. The Jedi would prevail, and any existing Dark Jedi were exiled from Republic space, only to find themselves on the Sith homeworld of Korriban. The Dark Jedi would welcome as gods the primitive Sith. However, from the dozen that crashed, only a handful stood out. The Marconis Sozan, commander of the Black Legions, Romulus Draper, Admiral Carnus Mur, the Supreme Leader in Gennari, Ajunta Pol, and in particular, Sorzus Syn. Syn was the right hand of Ajunta Pol, as well as his partner, and was arguably the second most powerful Dark Jedi during his reign. Strong and ambitious, she would always find ways to make herself more powerful, twisting and shaping life to however she saw fit. She would be responsible for the creation of many monstrosities, such as the Leviathan and numerous other war beasts, and the creation of dark side amulets that would change the galaxy forever. She and the rest of her shadow hands would continue to serve Ajunta Pol and Ziost for the remainder of their rule. Her ultimate fate, however, is unknown. Sorzus Syn, however, would not be the last female sorceress to seek power and control the galaxy. Mother Talzin was a Dathomiri Night Sister witch, and was the acting clan mother of the Singing Mountain clan. Unlike the Jedi or Sith, she drew her powers from the spirits of the Fang God and the Winged Goddess, both the primitive interpretations of the Son and the Daughter. Talzin began her machinations by first assisting Ventress in her revenge against her former master, Count Dooku. Once the first plan had failed, they employed the use of a Dathomiri Night Brother to take another chance at defeating Dooku. Unfortunately, the plan would ultimately fail, and Savage would be forced to go and seek out his long-lost brother, Maul. Talzin would then convince Asajj to eventually let go of her past with the Sith and become a true Night Sister. The celebration would not last long, as they soon had the Separatist army upon them, and although they had put up a valiant fight, they would all be utterly destroyed. With Asajj Ventress and Mother Talzin being the only survivors of the clan mother decided to bide her time and await the return of Maul and Savage, who had both been wreaking havoc across the galaxy. She also, during the time towards the end of the Clone Wars, made a play for power by attempting to steal the Force essence from the Bardotan Queen, but was thwarted by the Jedi Council Master, Mace Windu, and Gungan Senator, Jar Jar Binks. Her final act would be her machinations with Maul, who was revealed to be her son, to draw out Sidious, defeat him, and achieve galactic domination. This would ultimately be her last and final failure, as she would be overpowered by Sidious and Dooku, and a killing blow dealt by Grievous. Hello and welcome to Season 2 everyone. I hope you had a great and wonderful holiday. I know I didn't. But enough about that, because today I'll be bringing you two extremely powerful sorceresses that were not, in my opinion, given their due in terms of publicity within the respective EU. So I hope you find this video intriguing and educational as I bring you Sorzus Syn, the Dark Jedi, versus Mother Talzin, the Dathomiri Night Sister. Let the matchup begin. Not much is known about Sorzus Syn's physicality, but from her accolades we can assume that she was a capable combatant. From her image, we can also grasp that she was of average human female height, so around 5 foot 5 inches to 5 foot 7. Also, with her time spent on numerous battlefield engagements, it meant that she had very high levels of stamina to back up her fighting. As a Dark Jedi who fought on the front lines and survived, she must have been well versed in the art of lightsaber combat. Her hilt was of a standard design and housed a red alchemic crystal of her own creation. She was without a doubt a master of Form 1 Shi-Cho. The Determination form was the first form ever developed for the lightsaber and revolved around simplistic and direct sequences. The main trait was that certain masters would often lose themselves to the currents of the living force and become wild and unpredictable in their fighting style. It gave the practitioner everything they needed in order to duel efficiently, and even when possible, blast deflection. I'm also inclined to say that she knew Form 2, as lightsaber duels were extremely prevalent at the time. As she battled on multiple occasions with opposing Jedi, meaning her skill with the blade was extremely well honed. This is further backed up by Darth Trier, noting that the Sith of old were absolute masters of the weapon, while the Force wielders of her respective era were like children playing with toys compared to them. Seeing how Trier was an academic and master of the lore of the Sith, her praise would carry some weight. Other than that, not much can be said about Sorzus' skill in battle. By far, she held great amounts of refinement with the lightsaber. All Night Sisters and Night Brothers were all trained to be fearsome warriors, as well as being taught how to use such weapons, such as the likes of pikes to chain sickles. Throughout the generations, the females were a product of Zabraks and Dathomiri human females, but appeared to come across as average near human females. At a staggering 7 foot 4 inches, Mother Talzin was especially tall, even by the standards of her other clan members. As a Night Sister, she would have participated in the Crucible Arena, where candidates would face 3 tests: the Test of Fury, the Test of Night, and a Test of Elevation. The Fury round would test the combat skill against one another. The Test of Night would challenge how well the combatant's senses were in darkness, and the Test of Elevation would be to test the candidate's ability on how well they can dominate their opponent. These tests would be able to hone their combative physical skills and incredibly well sharpen them, especially in terms of agility and perception. Mother Talzin was able to create and wield a lightsaber resistant sword made from spirit ichor. Her fighting style appeared to follow that of an amateurish application of Shi-Cho, employing the use of one-handed slashes and parries. Her defense, when it came to it, was quite potent, able to halt the charge of the great swordmaster Mace Windu, making the feat more impressive due to the fact that single-handed fencing styles are weak against kinetic attacks, and that Form 7 is noted as one of the most aggressive forms of lightsaber combat. Her other dueling engagement was when she confronted Darth Sidious on Dathomir while possessing Count Dooku's body. Although she was able to hold her own for a while, she had been handily bested by Sidious, even being remarked by Sidious saying that she possessed none of Dooku's skill. But while this may be true, she still was able to put up somewhat of a valiant effort, which is very much in line from her bout against Windu. Even though she was outclassed in both of her situations, the fact that she was able to survive the first confrontation and survive the duel in the next, not while being dispatched instantly, speaks to high levels of skill from Mother Talzin. For this category, while I have tried my best to make a case for Sorzus, there really isn't much to go on from what information I had available. It also doesn't help that Mother Talzin's dueling feats put her in the mid to lower Council Master range in terms of dueling skill. So without further ado, I award Mother Talzin the wide edge in dueling and physicality. Syn appeared to wear a set of basic Dark Jedi robes and wielded a basic red lightsaber, as stated before. Being the academic that she was, she possessed a wide knowledge base of Sith artifacts and lore. She was able to craft as well as own several amulets that aided and even awarded her new abilities. With minor amulets, the ability to create protective shields, knit injured flesh, sharpen her focus in battle, and energize her weakened muscles were available to her. That meant she had a powerful passive force barrier alone, a form of healing factor, the ability to ward off any mental interference, and also get rid of fatigue. The Sith Avatar allowed her to read the writings of the Sith and communicate with the chatter of ghosts. The yoke of seeming burned the skin of the wielder, but allowed them to appear as anyone else, but unfortunately it was seized by Sozan. The heart of Grosh that belonged to the dead king, Dr. Grosh, when paired off with the helm of Grosh, allowed one to manipulate the very forces of nature. She also knew of the meditation sphere that encompassed the possessor and that amplified the user's spells by 1,000-fold. By far, her greatest creation and possession was the Mother Talzin. By experimenting with the heart of Grosh and with her alchemic mastery, she was able to craft the great amulets. Its power was able to turn sentience into brain raccoons and have control over them, and if necessary, preserve the user's spirits, if they were to fall in combat. Although she crafted one for Carnes Mer and Romulus Draper, she stated to have made a third and more powerful one for herself. Digging deeper into the tombs of the past Sith rulers, she discovered vast amounts of dark side secrets and found scrolls detailing Sith alchemy, and the most impressive of them all was the holocron of King Nakru. Sorzus Syn's overall power with the Force was breathtaking and overwhelming, regarded as being among the 5 most powerful of Sidious's predecessors, and having her spirit give Vitiate second thoughts about returning to Republic space. She has been noted to be more powerful than her contemporaries Romulus Draper and Carnes Mer, the latter spirit being more powerful than Vader and dominating Darth Krayt. Rather than the use of elemental applications of the Force, she preferred the use of her arcane abilities such as alchemy and spellcasting. Though it wasn't Syn's preference, she was still credited with the abilities Force Drain and Lightning. Her Force sense was so powerful that she could foresee a magnificent Sith Empire in the near future. Her expertise of Sith incantations were prestigious, stating that one had to memorize them and wield the power through gesture. Tutuskak, otherwise known as the Bolt of Hatred, was an attack that focused the practitioner's rage and conjured a spear of dark energy to pierce the opponent. This leads me to believe that it was an attack that was similar to the one Kal-Katarn used against Bok. Odujinya, aka the Dark Web, would summon tendrils to block swords and blind foes. Kozoi Kantuska, also called Suppressed Thought, would add the victim's brain and allow you to control their thoughts, which leads me to think of it as a mind control, which was a more powerful application of the mind trick ability. Dwomutsiska, or Summon Demon, as the name suggests, allowed Syn to call forth demons that were manifestations of the dark side that would take form in smoke and when attacking would become solid. It could vaporize the victim's body by entering the nose or mouth, but was still susceptible to force-based counterattacks. Sawinoka Hoikat, otherwise known as Reanimate Dead, was necromancy in its purest form, being able to animate both the freshly dead and skeletons. The ghouls could then transmit the necromancy through bites, adding more poor beings to the ranks of the undead. By far, her most devastating ability was that of growing and controlling leviathans from the corpses of the other deceased sentients, whether they be human or Uvaranian. Like Sorzus, Mother Talzin also owned and knew much about talismans and totems. With talismans that were put into rings and pendants, she could call upon a number of exotic abilities only familiar to the Night Sisters. The talismans of transformation could allow the wearer to change shape, becoming an animal and tap into an animal spirit essence. Such talismans include the Bulma, the Brachysets, the Earlu, and the Burma fish, but unfortunately the talisman of Raven was still in possession of another Night Sister. The Bulma talisman would fortify Talzin's strength, as known by the physicality of the animal. Her durability would also be immensely elevated due to the armor-plated nature of the Brachysets. There is no information regarding the biology of an Earlu and Burma fish, but I can safely say that the fish talisman would allow her to breathe underwater. The talisman of age tapped into the animal nature of humans, and briefly restored the vigor of youth to the wearer, meaning that Mother Talzin's advanced age was not an issue when she had the talisman in her possession. The
talisman of finding was shaped to resemble compasses that guide the user to an intended target. Talismans of resurrection could bring back spirits and place them into their physical bodies. However, the ability was beyond able to resurrect those who had decomposed into fetid skeletons. Finally, the talisman of counterspell offered protection from magic-based attacks and reflected them back onto the casters. The totems of elemental can summon night, smoke, sunlight, ice, flame, clay, and wood rots, so something similar to alter environment. However, some of these entities could be unreliable. Totems of familiars are more welcoming and allow the control of animals. As a Night Sister, she would also be able to tap into the power of spirits wherever she was. With a sense of Veshjet, she will be able to locate any targets by distinguishing scents, and by invoking the ears of chiroptics, her hearing is greatly enhanced and can let her map out unseen locations. With the speed of Tucha, she was capable of short bursts of blinding speed and energized leaps to cover great distances as showcased with her bouts against Windu, when she was able to keep up with the Jedi Master's speed and surely hold her own against Sidious. By invoking Kindre, she can manifest the binding force to use her hands and feet, enabling her to easily traverse a cliffside or hold on to a weapon with an unbreakable grip. However, this ability is questionable, as she was still able to get disarmed by Sidious. The revitalization of Woofer can refresh one's body and, if their will is sufficient enough, regrow lost limbs. Something that someone as powerful like Talzin can accomplish, I'm sure. With the Scream of Surian, she could mimic the Great Dragon's call, and when directed at an enemy, the waves could pop eardrums and shatter teeth. So it was essentially a combative force scream, as the ability in the past has been voluntary. By invoking the green spirits of plants, she was able to meditate more clearly and purge her bloodstream of poisons. The Surge of Brea allowed Night Sisters to reach into the spirit realm and manipulate plants in any physical form of their choosing that can wrap enemies or impale them. As for her other abilities such as telekinesis, she was more than capable, able to lift and quartet Kaisina's body off the ground, who was another Night Sister, closing corridor hatches, telekinetically gathering more cybernetic legs, levitating herself with the Force, and most impressively, able to push more back a considerable distance while maintaining a force barrier against the combined lightning of Count Dooku and Darth Sidious. Her pyrokinesis was likely a result of her totem of flame, able to light a cauldron and weld Maul's legs together. As for telepathy, she was also knowledgeable, able to repair Maul's shattered mind. Her healing abilities have also been previously mentioned, by using Spirit Ichor to mend wounds and invoke spells to heal limbs. Talzin's skill with force barriers was high level and was able to hold up a barrier that could deflect and absorb incoming blaster bolts. And like I said earlier, able to keep up a barrier against Palpatine and Tyrannus. Her magic-based illusions allowed her to intimidate the minds of the bravest warriors, something similar to Force Fear, and was able to summon dozens of illusionary Night Sisters that fooled regular soldiers, but not Darth Maul. Her most impressive showing was when she tortured Count Dooku from across the galaxy. She was also able to use an ability similar to that of Essence Transfer, when she used Darth Maul's life force to communicate with him. Force Strength was also another frightening ability she held, draining and nearly killing Count Dooku in the process. Dooku, who was among the most powerful Force wielders in the age. With Force Lightning, she could mow down battle droids and nearly subdue Mace Windu with it. But her greatest showing she had was contending briefly with Sidious, the most powerful Darksider in history. Another unique ability she held was Intangibility, that allowed her to evaporate into nothingness. Divination and Scrying also granted Talzin to see major events that would occur in the future, and could locate individuals across the galaxy. With a plethora of abilities at her disposal, Mother Talzin was truly something to be feared.
Wow, what a lot to go through. Both are extremely powerful force wielders, and it is now time to go through why and how one is more powerful than the other. They each have abilities that can be countered through the use of their natural abilities or supernatural equipment, but overall, I believe the Sorzus Syn's powers eclipses Talzin's own. Even though she may have better showings, we still cannot dismiss Syn's own capabilities. With sufficient power scaling, I can safely say that Sorzus Syn's alien and more terrifying abilities award her the win.
Mother Talzin had just dropped to the ground due to the sheer magnitude of the combined forces of Sidious and Dooku's lightning. She mustered all her force energy for one more ability before she would meet her end. As Grievous landed the killing blow, she left her physical form and transported herself back in time, leaving Sidious and his party behind, thinking they had finished her off. She would be back eventually to reap her revenge and rule the galaxy, but first she would seek power from the past, from the time of the first Dark Lords of the Sith. She came to find herself in what would appear to be a pit. Zyos, she thought, one of the planets that Sidious mentioned to her during the brief exchange of dark side information. From what she could perceive, there were corpses around her, most likely the bodies of slaves. She knew she was in the right place. Suddenly, a great dark presence caught her attention. She turned around to see Sorzus with her hood covering her face, simply staring at Talzin. Syn began to start walking into the slave pits towards Mother Talzin and stopped about a dozen meters before her. She could sense that this new being was powerful in the Force, but different. She was definitely not one of the Dark Jedi that accompanied her to Korriban, and she definitely wasn't a Sith priestess as she was a human. Whomever she was, she did not care and simply viewed her as a threat. Syn lashed out with force lightning and Mother Talzin dodged out of the way. Taken aback by her adversary's speed, Syn began to weave with her hands the dark side spells Dark Side Web and Suppressed Thought in hopes to slow Talzin down, but her efforts were fruitless and Mother Talzin reacted by attacking with her force lightning. As if instinct, Sorzus pulled out and absorbed the lightning with her lightsaber. As soon as the lightning was dispelled, she opened up with a fighting stance, taunting her enemy. Mother Talzin decided to answer the challenge by summoning a blade made from spirit ichor, and so the duel began. Mother Talzin's slashes were met by Sorzus Syn's Shi-Cho offensive. However, Syn quickly realized that she was outmatched, and so decided to switch over to Makashi. Taken by surprise, Talzin did not expect such control and refinement from her opponent, and decided to take a calculated risk. She created an opening for Sorzus by purposely exposing her left arm. Taking note of this opening, Syn spun around and severed Talzin's left forearm. Talzin wailed in pain, but by allowing Syn to attack her, it gave her the opportunity she needed to disarm her. But before Talzin could land the killing strike, her blade could not make contact with Syn's neck. It was as if there was an immovable object stood in between the blade and Syn. Syn retaliated to the sudden attack by force blasting Talzin over several meters away. As Mother Talzin recovered from the sudden burst, she used her rage to fuel her will and regenerate her lost appendage. Sorzus raised an eyebrow in intrigue and then followed up with a devious smile and a nod in acknowledgement. Mother Talzin ignored the pleasantries and pulled out the Talisman of Resurrection, and the dead began to rise around her. Wanting to not be outdone, Syn did the same by summoning a demon and raising her own pack of zombies. The two hordes clashed with each other, using the same tools that they utilized in their lives as slaves, and began to wreak havoc. Syn's demon cut a path through the horde and went straight for Mother Talzin. She effortlessly then raised her hands and disintegrated the entity with her green fluorescent force lightning. At the same time, Talzin averted her eyes back to the field and saw that more and more of her minions were being defeated, as their opposition was somehow converting them against Talzin through bites. She had had enough. Mother Talzin encased herself in a force barrier, while the foolish Sith spawn attempted to harm her in her impenetrable sphere. She then began to mow down the horde in her path as she hovered towards Syn. Talzin was going to rip her apart or die trying if she had to. She stopped her halt a few feet before Talzin, but instead of seeing fear or surprise, all she bore witness to was a sinister smirk on her face. But before she could strike at Syn, she heard a demonic-like shriek behind her. Was it another demon? No. She sensed something much worse behind her and witnessed the sight of a humongous leviathan. Sorzus mused how she began growing the beast while Syn was on a rampage, and that while blinded by rage, Syn had engineered her end. Mother Talzin tried to take the initiative and blasted the creature with force lightning, but to no avail. In her last few seconds of life, all she could do was bawl in horror as she was swallowed by the leviathan, eating her and at the same time burrowing directly into the ground. She had finally met her end. Sorzus stared at the hole for some time, and then looked up at the horizon and just simply walked to it, without saying a word. Thus, I proclaim Sorzus Syn, the Dark Jedi, the Sith Sorceress, the mother of all Sith spawn, the Victor.